I may have to refer to my notes once in a while, if you don't mind. My name is Carl Schneider. Must be right. I was an electrical engineer. Well, I still am an electrical engineer, but my profession was electrical engineering for 40 years. But while I was an engineer, in my spare time, I'd like to fix things. My father liked to do that too, and I guess I inherited that. Then I started to make things instead of just fixing them. I used to fix radios and TVs, which is in the electrical line. But I found out I'd like to make things out of wood. I made bookcases, screened in porch, furniture and toys for my grandchildren. And then I found out about wood turning 22 years ago. And that's what I do primarily since then. Now, although I'm called a wood turner, I don't turn the wood. The machine turns the wood. This machine spins the wood. So I'm actually a carver, and I use handheld tools to carve the wood while it's spinning. Hollow it out, carve the outside, the inside. So it is, you could say it's machine made because it's on a machine, but the machine, all it does is spin the wood, nothing else. I attended many classes because when I got into something, I really investigated, so I paid to take classes at various schools, and since then I even teach some classes. But I'm sort of retired from teaching now, so I still turn wood. These are my pieces behind me here. You can look at them later. What I do is recycle, or what wood turners do is they recycle trees that are trash. They don't cut down trees to turn wood. Other lumber yards do that. I mean, they pay somebody to cut down trees and slice it and all that, but we take the odd pieces that nobody else can use or wants to use, like a crotch piece, for instance. A crotch or a fork in the tree. This could be one branch or a trunk, and this is a side branch. So we call this a crotch or a fork. And there's not much you can make out of this in furniture and that, but wood turning can make some nice things. Matter of fact, this piece here is the other half, and somebody might say, well, what can you use that for? People have asked me sometimes, well, what can I said, well, you look at it, just like a painting, that's what you use it for.
Yeah.
But most of my things are either functional, bowls, vases, or vessels of some kind. Like this one up here is a vase. But you don't have to put anything in it. It can stand alone as an art piece. Sometimes the wood tells me, not so much in words, but the wood tells me what it wants to be. And like that crotch piece there. I couldn't make much of a bowl or vase out of that, but I decided just to make an art piece. And some people love to look at wood. Wood has a warmth and such. Interesting. But sometimes I tell the wood what I want it to be. I have an idea of what I want to make. I make a sketch. And that's the engineer in me. A lot of wood turners don't sketch anything. They have this idea of what they want to make. Well, sometimes they don't. They just get on there and whatever happens, happens. Well, I did that 2 or 3 times and nothing happened. I got a toothpick, you know? So I have to have a plan, you know? So that's what I do. The character of the raw log determines its fate. When I look at a log, if I'm looking for a particular kind of a log for something I want to make, and if I find that log that meets my criteria, then that's what it's going to be. Or I have a piece that I see, and it gives me an idea of what I can make with that. So, and the character of the log is sometimes there's bugs that have eaten away part of the inside of the log. This actually grew this way. This was the center of the log. And that gives it character. Or there are other aspects of it, the way the bark is and so forth. And that's what I look for. There's heartwood and sapwood. Heartwood is in the center of a tree or a branch that's very dark. That wood is generally considered dead. It's not growing anymore. I mean, the tree will grow taller and that will get wider, but the sapwood around the outside becomes older and older and then becomes part of the heartwood. And sometimes the sapwood is much lighter in color. You get a real good contrast. So that helps to make it look good.
Is that cross on the back of that, was that natural, or did you put that?
Which?
On that piece, on the back, there's looks like a cross almost, on that piece you're holding?
Oh.
Yeah.
No, this was bark.
Pass it back to her, let us see.
That. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Oh, you see, there's a crack.
Oh, okay.
And generally, if this laid in the wood pile a little too long, hold, and started to crack.
Oh, okay.
Generally, what I try to do is thin it out a bit so it dries faster, and normally it doesn't crack, but this cracked, and I didn't want the crack to go any further. So I made this slot in here and put in a piece of wood to keep it from widening. Thank you for that question.
Oh, so is that wood turning? Does it turn on the machine, a log, and then you cut it?
Yes. It's a little difficult for you to see
No,
that
I
there,
can
but
see,
this,
it's a machine that turns the log, and then you design.
carve it
Oh, you carve it as it turns.
as it turns.
That's like a potter, isn't it? Like a potter with a...
Yes, it's a horizontal potter's wheel, so to speak.
Right.
Except my material isn't soft like
They're
this.
subtractive, they're additive.
Yeah, well, they shape and that, but
Yeah.
they move
They add
stuff
clay.
around.
You take wood away.
clay, we use the wood.
I have a video later. I want to say I could have brought a lathe if it was a small one. My lathe is 600 or 700 pounds, that one there. And I don't have a...
The machine that turns is very heavy.
Some of them are. I turn some big things, and you need it to be heavy because when you first start out, it's not quite balanced. So it can shake, and also you need the diameter. I can turn something 20 inches in diameter. I don't have any real big pieces here. I did have some, but I could probably turn something almost as big as this, a platter on that lathe. But most things I turn are smaller.
And
Yes.
you use your chisels and tools as it's turning, right?
Yes.
Oh, you use
Yes,
a
I
chisel.
brought some tools to show you
I
later.
use a chisel and two,
Chisels and gouges.
So
Yeah.
you carve it as it's turning?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
The wood is chosen for a particular piece by the direction of the grain and the figure in the wood. Figure is the swirling of the grain, the pattern of the grain. Grain is just the fibers, but as they turn and twist and in roots and in crotches and so forth, they create a figure that we call it. And then we have knots and the bark, so all of that come together in designing and making a piece.
Yeah.
As wood dries, it warps and often cracks. And it takes about, for each inch in diameter of a log, it takes 1 year to dry. If you have a 10-inch diameter log, it would take 10 years until the inside it dries from the outside in, until the inside reaches the same humidity or moisture content as the air around it. It takes about 10 years. The thing is, with the outer rings of the log, they're trying to shrink. The inner rings aren't dry yet. And so what happens is they crack. And then the next crack and a crack and crack. And so you get these cracks in there. But if you turn it, rough turn it first, meaning you turn it to maybe twice the diameter, for instance, a bowl, if you want twice the thickness. If you want a bowl that's 10 inches in diameter, you turn it with a 1 inch thick wall, and it will warp, but generally it won't crack. The thing is, you can put that back on the lathe later and correct the warping. But the cracking, generally, there's nothing much you can do about it except like that one piece I put a splint in it. Tall objects require the grain to run vertical. Just not real tall, but this is a goblet, and the grain runs this way. If the grain ran this way, it would just break. It would be so easy. It wouldn't have any strength. So for tall objects, the grain runs vertical for strength, and for platters or flat objects, shallow bowls, the grain usually runs crosswise. Because if you had the grain vertical in there and that thin, that would break easily too. But if you make it thick enough, I mean, I've made some platters out of vertical grain, but as long as it's thick enough and you keep it from cracking, which we can do by coating it with a wax, a liquid wax, put on there to keep it from drying too fast and cracking, so it dries more evenly and it's less likely to crack. The grain direction also determines the best way to carve it. The more difficult way to carve something is against the grain, and some people may have tried to use a planing wood, and you plane along the grain and it goes nice. But if you take the edge of the wood sticking out, where the end grain is sticking out, and you try to plane that, it's very difficult. So that determines the direction that we use to carve when it's spinning. You get smoother surface, less sanding to make it smooth, and you can even get some pretty bad tear out if you're carving in the wrong direction. Some of that wood can just chunk out. When I finish a piece, I always use a clear finish, either a Danish oil or a very thinned out polyurethane varnish. I don't like to coat the wood so it's so shiny that it reflects the light and you can't see the grain so much. And people think they like to feel the wood. Some people like to feel the wood, feel like they're touching the wood. And with a thin coating on it, they still can have that sensation. I have a video of somebody turning wood. It's only about 15 minutes. I hope you have time to watch it.
Before you do that, would you tell them about your white vase that you carved, the wood, the metal right there?
This one here?
Mm-hmm. Because that's so different.
Okay, I just brought this in the other day. And this is palm, sable palm, or cabbage palm, I call it. And palm trunks are just a bundle of straws, like very tiny straws, all vertical grain. They don't have any figure, they don't have any branches, they don't have any crotches, just at the top where the fronds are, but then that gets taller and becomes this. This is about how round this trunk was, of this palm tree. So I turned this shape, and before I put this collar in here, I hollowed it out with special tools that I used to hollow it out. And you have to keep checking the thickness to see, make sure you don't go through the side. But once I had this shape, then I decided to decorate it with what they call a Celtic chain, or Celtic symbol, Irish Celtic symbol. So I printed it out on paper and made it so it would fit pretty much this diameter, and taped it on there. And then I took a burning pen with a sharp edge, like a knife edge, and I followed the contour of all these white lines, okay? Burned right through the paper. Oh, before I did that, while it was turning on the lathe, I made these two grooves to frame it. And while it was spinning on the lathe, I take a wire and hold it on there so it burns that groove. Because I had planned to burn the dark parts here, where I had outlined the white part. I burned around it, which took quite a while, but I think it gives it more character than if I had painted it with a paintbrush or a pen or something like
Yeah,
that.
beautiful.
So that's how I got that on.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Very beautiful.
That must have taken a long time to.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's
But
tedious.
I'm not a production turner, never was. I have plenty of time, so I enjoy doing it, and I rarely ruin a piece. You may say, well, who ruins pieces when it makes them? Well, there are some turners, like I said, particularly the ones that put a piece of wood on there and say, well, let's see how it looks. I'll just keep turning, or they go through the side of a bowl. Maybe they're in a hurry or whatever. Again, the engineer in me says, check, check, check. If you're not sure where you are inside a piece or how thin it is, check it, stop, check. So I rarely ruin a piece. And when I do, I really get upset for a few hours.
How do you get the inside with, just starting with a little hole up a
Yeah.
How do you get the whole inside?
There are some tools that have a hook on the end with a cutter.
Uh-huh.
And you can get in there. I've made things about that big around through a 3/4 of an inch hole. When I made my first one, I tried it and I said, I'll never do this again. But luckily with the school that I went to, was the teacher at that class was the guru, the expert in doing hollow forms, they call it. And I took the class from him, and ever since I've been making a lot of hollow forms. Now I've gone high tech in some cases where you have a laser pointer. And that laser pointer points about 1/4 of an inch or maybe a 1/2 inch away from the tip of the tool. And that laser pointer's up here. So when I'm in the piece going around, that laser pointer is following my tool, and when it gets to the edge or close to the side of the tool, that light shines down to the floor. It doesn't shine on top of the piece anymore. So that helps. And then somebody came up with the idea of having a video screen where the camera, instead of the laser pointer, the camera is pointing at the tip of the tool. And you draw on the screen, the video screen, the monitor, you draw the tool tip. So when you're, it's hard to imagine, but when you're inside a piece, that it looks like the camera is shining right through the piece, because you can what you have drawn on the screen looks like the tip of the tool, but the tip of the tool is inside. You really can't see the tip of the tool, but on the screen it's drawn there. So it looks like you can actually see through it. It's an amazing image. Anyway, it's too much time to set up, so I don't always do it
Sounds
that
like
way.
robotic surgery.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
I'm going to show you a few things. When when I speak about the grain, let me turn this light on. Or figure, I should say. These two bowls were made from the same piece of wood. It was a slab of wood that was so wide, so thick, so long. And if you look at the inside figure of that with those ovals, and
Yeah,
now look at this,
it's different.
it's quite different. It's
Yeah.
starting to fade, but you can see the figure is totally different from the same grain. It was turned upside down.
Do they have the same color?
Yeah, they would say, I don't know why,
Yeah, it's a little.
maybe I had it like this in the shop and this faded and I wanted to stack them like this.
I think on that top one, you can show some warping on the top of the bowl, how it warps.
Yeah, some bowl, like this wood was not quite dry when I turned it. You can probably
Oh.
see it's warped, it's not a flat rim, it's warped.
Mm.
And this one, turned at the same time, very little warping. So that
Yeah.
probably has to do with how the grain runs too.
Mm.
So, we can make bowls with, when you take a log, cut a log in half, and you can make a bowl where the rim is the inside part, same shape as the half of the log, or you can make it so that the top of the bowl is the bark side. I don't have any samples here, but it's very interesting when you see a bark edge bowl, because it looks like it's oval, but it isn't. It's too difficult to explain. But anyway, you can choose how you make the piece, whether you use it from the inside to the out, like the top of the bowl, the bark side, or the top of the bowl, the inside. Here's a small, two small bowls. This was cut out of this one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's tools called coring tools that go in there, and you can make, if it's big enough, you can make 3 and 4 and 5 bowls out of one piece of wood. And you throw less away, there's less shavings and everything, so it is better from that, more efficient from that standpoint. As a matter of fact, I have a picture here.
Would you like me to move?
No, thanks. It's okay. This shows the coring tool. So this is the tool. I'm holding the end here, and the cutter part has a curve to it, and it goes inside, and so that's the second bowl I carved. I carved the first one out of there, and the next one behind that, and I probably carved one more right about in the middle there. Carved out of there. This is a better picture of my lathe, and what it shows is a log that was just too heavy for me to lift up. I mean, I could, but my back would hurt for weeks. So I have this block and tackle. There's a rope over here tied to a block and tackle. I'm lifting that log up onto the lathe. And then I put a piece of wood underneath to get it centered, and then I hold it between centers and lock it in, and when it's spinning, then start turning. Let me sit down here now. Show you a video.
Oh.